We are learning chapter 12 about the Renaissance, specifically the Italian Renaissance. And today we learn about new styles and techniques. That is in section 1.2, pages 326 to 327. Log in to Loda USD website, Clever, Cengage, and log in using your student account and password, of course. And from the left side, navigate through that. Unit 5, Chapter 12, Section 1, the Italian Renaissance. Lesson 2, New Styles and Techniques, pages 326 to 327. The chapter's essential question is, how did new ways of thinking transform European culture? And the objective of this lesson is to describe how the Renaissance inspired new forms of expression in art, literature, and architecture. Lesson 1.2 discusses how art, literature, and architecture changed during the Renaissance. Renaissance architects came up with new building strategies. However, the movement demanded new forms of expression from artists as well. For example, they found new ways to show landscapes in a realistic manner by developing a technique called perspective to produce an impression of depth and distance, just like what you are seeing here. While art during the Middle Ages appeared flat, perspective allowed Renaissance artists to produce works that look three-dimensional. The subject of the artwork changed too. Artists like Titian, a great painter in Venice, still drew inspiration from religious subjects. These new styles of arts weren't limited to painters and sculptors. Renaissance writers got involved as well. Instead of using Latin, which is the language of the church, many wrote in the vernacular, or their native language. One of the first to do so was the poet Dante, who wrote his masterpiece, The Divine Comedy, in the Italian language about 1300s. The work describes Dante's long journey led in part by the ancient Roman poet Virgil. This picture right here shows us an example of what a perspective is in terms of art and architecture. Renaissance artists often included perfectly proportioned buildings in their paintings. As you can see in this painting, in this picture, The Ideal City, that's the title of this painting by Piero della Francesca. The larger building in the foreground and the smaller ones in the background provide an illusion of depth and distance. During the Renaissance, architects found inspiration by studying the buildings of ancient Rome and Greece. They incorporated classical engineering features such as arches and domes in their own creation. One of the greatest of these architects was Felipo Brunelleschi of Florence, whose impressive dome illustrated on the picture on the opposite page if you have the textbook, and it's on the next slide or if you will scroll it down, you will see the picture of Brunelleschi's work, which is the Duomo. If you will zoom this in, you will see this following details of this infrastructure. Beneath the tiles of the dome's exterior lie several million bricks made of different shapes and set either direction, horizontally and vertically, depending on where they were used. Now let's talk about the nesting domes. To prevent the base of the dome from bulging outward, Brunelleschi constructed an inner and an outer dome connected by vertical and horizontal brick ribs. Now, the supporting rings. Experts know that this wooden ring helped hold the dome in place. They believe that the two stone rings above may also have been used. Now let's take a look at this animated presentation of the National Geographic Channel on how Brunelleschi came up with an idea and completed this historic infrastructure.
It's 1418 in Florence, Italy. You've been challenged to build a great dome for the Santa Maria del Fiore, one of the grandest cathedrals ever built. And you have no formal architectural training. No pressure, right? For Filippo Brunelleschi, a goldsmith and clockmaker, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. He considered the challenge carefully. Then proposed a daring plan, using methods that experts don't fully understand even to this day. At the time, domes were often built as semicircles. But the town fathers required that Brunelleschi build an 8-sided dome that would be even taller and stronger. It would also have no central support system to hold it up during construction. Even worse, the dome's base was an imprecise octagon with no true center. But Brunelleschi had that covered. There would be 2 domes instead of one, an inner and an outer shell, held together by giant brick arches and interlocking rings of stone and wood. The rings would work like hoops on a barrel, keeping the dome from expanding outward. To move heavy loads hundreds of feet up, Brunelleschi designed ingenious new machines, including an ox-driven hoist and massive lifting devices far ahead of their time. So, revolutionary design? Check. Groundbreaking engineering? Check. Can-do attitude? Check. But with no central support system, how would he actually build it? First off, the masonry would have to support itself during construction. To do this, Brunelleschi placed the bricks in a herringbone pattern, which spiraled to the top of the dome, with vertical bricks acting as bookends to hold the others in place. They laid about 1 row a week, giving the mortar time to cure. At this rate, the dome grew at a snail's pace of about a foot a month. But perhaps most puzzling is how he was able to place the bricks with such precision.
Hey!
Many experts agree that he used guide ropes. One theory states that ropes ran from a flower pattern on the work platform that showed exactly where the bricks should go. Another has ropes running from the dome's center, tracing a series of cones that grew smaller as they ascended to the top. Still another suggests a different arrangement of central ropes and wooden templates. However it was done, it worked. The 8 faces of the dome met at the top precisely, just as Brunelleschi had planned. In all, it took 16 years to complete the dome. When he died in 1446, Brunelleschi left behind no sketches and no details as to exactly how he achieved his masterpiece. Today, it remains the largest masonry dome in the world, more than 500 years after it was built.
So bottom line, Renaissance artists, writers, and architects use new techniques in order to execute the type of art or perspective that they want to showcase to. Now let's go to the review and assess questions for number 1, reading check. What new techniques did Renaissance artists use? Number 2, make inferences. Why do you think some Renaissance writers began expressing themselves in the vernacular? That is the language they use, the native language they use. Number 3, interpret visuals. What difficulties do you think the builders of the dome encountered during its construction? Go ahead, go back to our Google Classroom and open the review and assess assignment, Chapter 12, Section 1, the Italian Renaissance. And it is in Lesson 2. Fill in the information, last name, first name, class period, date, the definitions of the key vocabs, and of course, the title of the lesson that we just covered, and most definitely the responses or your answers to the review and assess questions. If you are aiming for full credit, which you should, of course, on top of the correct answers to the questions, be sure that you are writing in complete sentences. There you have it, folks. Chapter 12, Section 1.2 or Lesson 2, New Styles and Techniques.